Welcome back to the MovieBabble podcast. As always, you can check us out online at MovieBabbleReviews.com. I'm your host, Colin, and today, continuing the musical chair of guests, is Brennan. Nick is currently out, but hopefully he'll be back next week. And today we are talking about this week's top 5, including How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, and Fighting with My Family, as well as some Oscar predictions and expectations. This week, the top 5, taking the number 1 spot is How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. That's coming in with $55.5 million domestic, followed by Alita Battle Angel in second place with $12 million domestic. The Lego Movie 2, the second part, still holding on to a top 5 spot at number 3 with $10 million. And then coming in at number 4 is Fighting with My Family at $8 million. And number 5 is rounding out the top 5 with Isn't It Romantic at $7.5 million domestic. Most of the movies haven't really shifted a whole lot. Last week, Alita was in the number 1 spot. The Lego Movie 2 was in the number 2 spot. Isn't It Romantic was in the 3rd spot. It's now at number 5. The only really impressive jump in the chart is Fighting with My Family, which was at 40 last week. But that's because it was only open in 3 theaters. And so it didn't, 4 theaters, so it didn't really have a lot to beat for this week.
Yeah, and I must say, there you see the top How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, opens up with $55.5 million, which is a franchise best for the How to Train Your Dragon films. This is a pretty promising number for them, I think, with the money they've been making overseas, combined with how things are looking here domestically. This is definitely going to be a very profitable film for them. They're already at $275 million globally, because this movie has been out, has been opening up in several markets since January. So you're seeing now, I believe it's opening in China this weekend as well as the United States. So you're going to see a lot more money pouring for this film, and you'll see it jump up several hundred million of dollars as the weeks go on.
Yeah, I think we're going to see, we've seen a lot with it already. I have no doubt we're going to see a lot more. It doesn't really have any heavy competition that I'm aware of for a while. Wonder Park opens up in a few weeks, but I don't know if that's really going to be on par with this. So I think we're going to see How to Train Your Dragon, if not hanging on to the top 5, hanging on to the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, and I must say, it's a really good movie too. It's a pretty fun film. I thought it was a pretty fitting end to the trilogy. I had a good time with it, so I would definitely urge people to check out the third How to Train Your Dragon film. And yeah, just to confirm that Wonder Park, it's opening on March 15th. So yes, this film definitely does have the animated market for a long time to come.
Yeah, so DreamWorks has got another hit with this one. Big surprise. It's been a pretty successful franchise so far.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's really only competing against the Lego Movie right now.
Yeah.
So it's off to a good start.
Yeah.
Coming in second is Alita Battle Angel. This is its second week domestically, and it had a pretty steep drop off of 57.9%. So it's down to 12 million this week, and it's still just kind of plugging along overseas. I believe it opened in China this week as well, right?
Yeah, it had a pretty strong opening at 65 million in China this weekend. So that definitely, I think that the studio is definitely happy. I think they definitely see a way for this film to make a profit now. I think the Japan numbers haven't come in yet, but it also opened there this weekend. But China, they got a $65 million opening weekend, so if they can make the money there, you know what? I don't know about sequel, but the film might have enough money. It might play out like Bumblebee, and just make enough to maybe have the studio greenlight it because of its overseas intake. But the $12 million this weekend is slightly disappointing. I mean, a 57.9% drop off, as you said. It's not the greatest. I think that the studio probably wanted somewhere around 45%. But it's it's rough for the movie. I think 100 million domestically might be out of reach at this point. It's going to be tight. They're going to be really chugging to get there, but the movie, with its money in China, it might have enough to make a profit, but it's definitely going to be tough for them.
Yeah, Alita is definitely fighting an uphill battle at this point. Nick and I talked about it last week, but it's estimated that it's going to need about 500 million to be within the sequel range, just because of how long they had to market it with it being pushed back twice, and I mean just how expensive it is to market in general. But they've put almost a year of marketing into the first trailer at least, and so there's a lot at stake here. I think the China opening was promising enough. It nearly matched the American opening. And once the Japan numbers come in, I think we'll see it bump. But I think it's definitely going to struggle to make it to 500 million.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to play a little bit more of the optimistic card with this film. I think that I'm going to make the bold prediction here that it will get a sequel. Um, I think that if the studio does greenlight it, though, they need to cut the budget a little bit from the 170 to 200 that it was sitting at now. I think they need to cut it about 40 million dollars, maybe make it a smaller scoped film. I mean, it's such a grand universe that this movie takes place in, but I think that if they do a sequel, they need to be a little bit smarter, a little bit more cautious with their money. But I will be optimistic. I think that it will make enough money overseas. I think it's going to be close, but this $12 million second weekend it's not very promising for them domestically.
Yeah, I think if it follows kind of like Bumblebee's path, then it'll be one of those movies that, a sequel is feasible, but it definitely have to be kind of stripped down budget wise and reevaluating how can you make this movie and make it look and feel the same, but not necessarily be as expensive and over the top.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. Um,
It,
and third place this weekend we had Lego Movie 2, the second part, dropped down to 10 million, as you said, in its third weekend. So that's a 51.9% drop for them. Um, they have a $99 million budget or so. They're up to $83 million now domestically. I think that this movie and the Lego franchise in general, the Lego movie franchise in general, is very worried at this point. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I would agree. I think the Lego franchise is kind of in a similar boat to Alita right now, as in, this is making money, but not necessarily making enough money to justify the production budget.
Right.
And so I think it's one thing where, these movies have been a hit in the past. And I think it's something the studio is just going to have to evaluate. How can we either bring people back or how can we make this cheaper and take advantage of the audience that is coming back? And, it may not be as explosive and large of a profit, but I think there's still profit to be made if they can figure out the right formula for these movies going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the biggest um, failure for them has been the overseas market. I mean, only $53 million so far. That's their intake to their overall box office revenue from overseas markets, which is pretty disappointing. Seeing as the Lego Movie, the first one there, made $211 million overseas. Lego Batman movie made $136 million overseas, and this is just sitting at 53 million. That's not gonna get you success. They needed a lot more with this movie, and I think that a lot of the pundits really really guessed wrong with this movie, including myself. I thought this was definitely going to be a February hit. I didn't think it would see maybe the fatigue that it is. I thought it was going to play out a lot more like the Lego Batman movie. Um, it's definitely disappointing, and I had hopes maybe after the first weekend that they'd bounce back, but $136 million worldwide. They marketed the film pretty hard, so they're probably going to need a lot more than that to make good money back. It's definitely a tough path ahead for this film.
Yeah, and even China would be kind of your last bet. It's already opened in China, um, kind of dismally, same as it did overseas, or not overseas, but domestically. And I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I didn't expect this to be as big as the first movie,
Hmm.
but I thought it would fare pretty much as well as Lego Batman. Certainly much better than Lego Ninjago,
Yeah.
which is unfortunately the only movie it's managing to outpace right now in the franchise.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
it is something that'll definitely need to be reevaluated by Lego and by Warner Brothers Animation going forward.
yeah, 100%. I think that they definitely need to restructure their entire plan going forward with their animation studios. I think that this film, it's a good film too. Don't get me wrong, but it's disappointing numbers, disappointing returns overall. So I think that seeing another Lego movie, do you think that we'll see another Lego movie to the scale of this one, or do you think it'll be more of those direct to DVDs or maybe Netflix Lego movies? What do you think?
I wouldn't be surprised if they went more of the Netflix route. And I
Yeah.
think a way they can save on budget is not necessarily having so large of a cast. Maybe if it was more of a scaled down version, you
Hmm.
could focus a little bit more on the interaction with the real world. And so in the second one, there was quite a bit more runtime dedicated to the real world segments,
Yeah,
which I have to imagine is much cheaper than animating the Legos.
for sure.
And so I think if they can strike kind of a balance between that, I think movies could work going forward just with a reduced budget. I think Netflix is a big possibility because then it could shift into maybe even more of a TV show kind of thing. So you do like a little limited series or even a mini series. So I think there's definitely a future there because they have had success with it in the past. They know that there is a desire for these movies. I just think they're having a hard time sticking that desire and really funneling it to the right crowds at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And I know inflation's a big part of it. But the first film, only 5 years ago, had a budget of just $60 million. I think
Hmm.
if this film had a similar budget to that, we wouldn't be um, as dismissive of this film's returns and how maybe it plays out for the future of the franchise. Because on a $60 million budget, they definitely would have been probably getting to the point where they're almost breaking even at this point, including marketing. Whereas now, with a $99 million budget plus marketing, it's definitely a huge uphill battle for the Lego movie. And it bums me out because you're seeing a pretty weak January and February so far. I mean, I know this year uh, down the road is going to be huge, especially with all the major Disney releases. But
Hmm.
early on, it's been a pretty lackluster year at the box office.
Yeah, and I have to wonder how much of the Lego Movie's budget also went to Chris Pratt this time around. Because you think about where he is now compared to where he was when the first Lego Movie came out. I mean, it was his first large movie role. He had Guardians of the Galaxy later that year, and then he had Jurassic World the following year. And so he's just kind of been on an uphill climb since then. But when he would have been cast for this movie, he was still just the chubby guy from Parks and Rec.
Hmm.
And so I imagine he carries a much larger price tag, especially voicing two roles in this one. So I wonder if, even the franchise's future means stepping away from him a little bit and going with some smaller, lesser known stars or, just people that aren't Hollywood's top leading men and women at this point in time.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. I mean, with an animated movie, you don't always need A-listers. I know a lot of animated movies always feature A-listers, almost all the time, but I think that they could definitely go that route that you're saying. Take someone who's not maybe uh, such heavy or such a large price tag in Hollywood, and go with someone who's a little bit more of a smarter financial option, and they can maybe bounce back down the road. But this is definitely it's definitely tough to see. And yeah, with Chris Pratt, you're right there. He's since the first Lego movies. There's been two Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's been in Infinity War, two Jurassic World films. He's really become one of Hollywood's biggest stars, I'd say, over the past 5 years. Um, so, I mean, he probably did carry a much bigger price tag this time around.
Yeah. And even Elizabeth Banks has seen a lot of success since then. Not necessarily with a lot of the side characters, but those two leads especially are much more in demand than they would have been in 2014.
Yeah, 100%. We'll move into number four for the weekend. It was Fighting with My Family, which made $8 million. As Colin said there last weekend, it was just in four theaters. It had a limited release. This weekend, it gets expanded to 2,700 theaters. It jumped up 5,673%. So there you are, Fighting with My Family. Number four, $8 million. What do you make of that?
I think it's a pretty promising release for it. and I mean it's certainly a lot larger than last week, as you
Hmm.
said.
Yep.
Um, but considering it's not meant to be a blockbuster. It's not really a blockbuster time of year, and it's only coming in on an estimated $11 million budget, which is pretty conservative. And with it making you know a little over 8 million this week, I have no doubt that it'll be able to recoup that a lot. I know Dwayne Johnson has been promoting this movie for ever since it was announced, pretty much. He's producing it. He's heavily involved within it. He has a role in the movie, and so I think on his steam alone, this movie will carry on. Let alone the, I mean, I've heard nothing but positive reviews of this movie. Everyone that I know that's seen it has really enjoyed it. All the critics seem to really enjoy it, and so I think this movie will not necessarily stick to the top five for an incredibly long time, but I think it'll make up its budget and make a nice little profit.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's definitely the route it's going to take. I mean, it's had some great reviews as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing this film. I got to see How to Train Your Dragon 3 this weekend, but I didn't get to see Fighting with my family. I'm going to try to see it as soon as I can, just because of all the great reviews it's been getting, and people have been really praising this film, and it did pretty solid for the budget that it posted. So I definitely think Fighting with My Family is going to make its money. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing kind of how that plays out in the next few weeks. And as you said, yes, Dwayne Johnson, he's a pretty big guy in Hollywood. Let's not mistake that. So he's definitely big for this film, as a producer and promoting this film on his widely followed social medias. Um, I definitely see no downside with Fighting with My Family. I see that this film really making a good amount of money going forward, and enough of a profit that the studio will be happy.
Yeah, I don't think they're worried about this one at all. I think the results are pretty pleasing, even so far, and I think down the road they'll be perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, 100%. Number five, you get to move into number five this weekend. Isn't it romantic? $7.5 million dollars in its second weekend. It's up to $33 million dollars for its total gross. So that was a 47% drop from last weekend. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe last week Nick said this is going to Netflix pretty soon.
Yes, I believe actually might be after next week.
Yeah.
Um, and I know internationally it's already released on Netflix, and in the US it's got a very quick turnaround. Um, and I'm actually gonna look and see if I can find that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
haven't seen
it.
this movie yet.
No, neither have I. I'm probably going to wait till it drops on Netflix.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I know Nick saw it. He said it's a perfectly enjoyable movie. Nothing that we'll still be talking about years from now, but something that is just, a nice date night movie, something to throw on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean 7.5 million for your second weekend for a film like this. That's pretty respectable. Up to 33 million overall. It probably didn't have that large of a budget, and plus factoring in what Netflix paid to get this film, I think this is definitely for Warner Brothers a very profitable film, a smart choice, and I think it's definitely their bright spot of the week. Uh, Lego Movie 2 is definitely not that for Warner Brothers, but this is definitely something that they can be happy about.
Yeah, and I think it's made a nice profit. Again, it's not supposed to be a huge blockbuster, but it'll fill Warner Brothers' pockets a little bit, help
Yeah,
them help
yeah,
distract them from some of the losses they've faced with the Lego Movie 2 so far.
yeah, 100%. So that's a pretty decent top five for this weekend. I mean, How to Train Your Dragon 3 really did power the weekend box office. We know though this weekend movie lovers are thinking about something else, and that is the Oscars. So that is tonight. I'm looking forward to it. Got any guesses for tonight?
I have some fears for tonight.
Okay.
um,
What do you got?
so, I mean, talking about the big one, we'll just start with that. But
Yeah.
Best Picture, there really aren't many of the movies in this year's Best Picture nominees that have wowed me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Black Klansman, A Star Is Born, The Favorite, Roma are all really, really great films. But I see, just a lot of like middle of the road stuff like Vice, Green Book. Um, if Bohemian Rhapsody wins, I'm never watching a movie ever again. Like it, I, if that movie wins, I will lose all faith in every moviegoer. And then, Black Panther, I think is going to be the hot topic, whether it wins or whether it doesn't win. I think, you know, the Academy announced earlier last year that they're going to start doing a popular category, and I've when that was shot down, I feel like a lot of those movies that would have won popular, kind of like Bohemian and Black Panther, were merged into Best Picture so that they
Yeah,
could still get some recognition.
yeah.
And so, I mean, it is a tremendous feat for Black Panther. I mean, I love the movie, very happy with it, very happy for Ryan Coogler and Chadwick Boseman and everyone involved. But I just don't know if it is Best Picture material.
Yeah, and I think the fear for them tonight is that they might not win a single award. I mean, I look, they got 7 nominations, which is very, very impressive. But I look kind of up and down the board here, and I don't know. I think costume design is one that Black Panther definitely has a good shot at winning. Um, I think if you look at sound editing and you look at sound mixing, Black Panther might take wins there. But I don't. I could definitely see a scenario where Black Panther goes 0 for 7 tonight, which I mean, it would be disappointing, but 7 nominations is pretty good for a Marvel film, and I think it's definitely kind of breaking the superhero stigma. So I think that it's a proud moment, definitely for fans of cinema.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a thing to take note of, and it's very exciting. I know, especially with The Dark Knight, 10 years ago at the Academy Awards, with Logan, with Wonder Woman, there's been a larger and larger push to get some of these quote more Oscar-worthy movies recognized. And so I am glad to see Black Panther among the nominees.
Mhm.
And I hope we see not only just more superhero films that get this kind of recognition, but more complex and more deserving films like Black Panther that are put out instead of stuff like the 2015 Fantastic Four.
Yeah, yeah,
just
100%. Um,
just
Yeah, I think one thing about these best pictures, a lot of people are saying it's definitely a weird group. I mean, you look at these 8 nominees, and it's an unexpected group, but I kind of dig it personally. I think that it's a good diverse amount of options. It doesn't always have to be the small indie film that gets nominated. I don't get me wrong, I love all types of films, but I think it's nice to see representation across the board here. Um, and I think there's a lot of films here that are deserving of the award this year. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's. Um, I don't have a clear favorite. I mean, I'm edging towards personally the favorite just because I truly enjoyed that film, one of my favorites of the year. But there are a few films on here that I wouldn't be disappointed if they won. All in all, though, it's tough to make a prediction, but I'm gonna stick with Roma as the safe bet tonight for Best Picture.
yeah, I think Roma has a really good shot. Personally, I would love to see Black Klansman take Best Picture. I don't know if it will. I think it kind of has the social climate too. There was a lot of upset last year with Get Out not being taken as seriously in the Best Picture category. And I mean, Get Out did have
Yeah,
really heavy competition, but I think there's been a much larger shift towards socially relevant films. And so, I mean, you look at Vice, you look at Black Klansman, Black Panther, even Green Book, though I know myself and not many people would agree it's really socially relevant.
mm.
It still kind of has a social message. And so I think I think there's a better shot for Black Klansman than there would have been for something like Get Out last year or in years past.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely it's a pretty solid film. I think adapted screenplay is the one that Black Klansman is. I would predict. I'd put my money on Black Klansman for adapted screenplay if it does take home one of the major awards there. I was kind of surprised that John David Washington didn't get a nomination for that film. But I mean, you have some pretty strong Best Actor nominees in my personal opinion. I don't know what you think, but
Yeah, I think honestly, I think Best Actor could be a very divisive position this time, or a very divisive award. I think Christian Bale. I mean, obviously a huge weight transformation, as he tends to do with his roles. Gained at least 60 pounds. I think it was a little bit over that to play Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
You have Bradley Cooper, who not only was starring in this movie, but having to direct himself while starring in this movie. Willem Dafoe, Rami Malek, who, I mean, is probably the most recognized for this right now because Bohemian Rhapsody is, I believe it's 11th or 12th highest grossing film of last year. And so it is the most widely seen. And so I think he's got a lot of the popular vote. And Viggo Mortensen, no stranger to the Academy Awards himself, is coming in for Green Book. Personally, I'd say it's probably going to go down to Christian Bale, just because the Academy really tends to reward physical transformations,
Hmm.
um, which I don't really know what their obsession with that is, but when someone goes through a really drastic physical transformation, that typically gives him a little bit of an edge. Personally, I think he did a really good job with the role. I don't necessarily think it was the best written, but I think he did a terrific job with it. He also has the same birthday as Dick Cheney, so I don't know if that
Oh
really
wow,
plays into best actor.
good. That's a good fun fact.
but but I mean, it could. I think Bradley Cooper did a terrific job. Although I don't really like Bohemian Rhapsody, I think Rami Malek did a good job. Same thing with Viggo Mortensen in Green Book. And then I haven't seen At Eternity's Gate with Willem Dafoe, but growing up with the original Spider-Man films, I'm a huge Willem Dafoe fan, so
Yeah,
I'll
100%.
support him 100%.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I wouldn't be disappointed if any of these five individuals won, but I mean, I really enjoyed Christian Bale's performance in Vice, not just the weight transformation, but just his mannerisms. If you ever watch a Dick Cheney speech or interview, that he literally became him, and he did a pretty good job in the role as he always does. And Bradley Cooper, I mean, I think he really shined in A Star Is Born. That was um, somewhat of a career-defining moment for him, in my opinion. And Remy Malek, I mean, the movie has made $860 million. He was like what I think the third actor in this role. I know it was Sacha Baron Cohen originally. I don't know if there's anyone in between. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that he took the spot later on. But he definitely owned it. I'll give him credit there. Remy Malek, I think, did a terrific job. And for me, it was more than an impression. I mean, a lot of people are saying that it was just uh, an impression of Freddie Mercury, which it is because he's playing the role. But I think that he also brought a little bit to the role as well. I was pretty floored by what he could do in that film. But for me tonight, I think that I agree with you. Christian Bale, definitely. Uh, I, I'm leaning towards him, but I could definitely see Remy Malek winning. Um, but I wouldn't be disappointed with any of the five.
Yeah, and I think that's where I stand kind of differently on this than I would from Best Picture. Is I wouldn't be upset, or I wouldn't think that anybody was slighted if any one of these five people walked away with the award tonight.
Yeah. I also wanted to point out animated features. So you got The Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, Mirai, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Um, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the obvious choice. It's been winning at several other award shows, sweeping the board. But I personally, I would pick it to win. But I see a scenario where Isle of Dogs wins. It's been in my head for weeks. I was a fan of that film. I liked Into the Spider-Verse more. It was my second favorite film last year. But I do see a scenario where Isle of Dogs wins. Do you think I'm crazy, or do you see that as well?
No, I don't agree, but I definitely see where you're coming from. I mean,
Yeah,
Isle of Dogs has also been out the longest. It came out last March or
yeah,
last April, I believe,
yeah.
and so it certainly had a lot more time to pick up steam, get more word of mouth, especially among the people in Hollywood. Now, personally, I'm on the Spider Verse train.
No,
they've
I agree.
been
Me too.
Yeah, they've been cleaning up most of the awards they've been nominated for so far. I think they really have the cinematography of the film, which is a little different in an animated feature how you judge that, but the design of it, just the style. I think Spider Verse has a lot more of these X factors going towards it, and I think where Isle of Dogs could be hurt and is just because it is in a bit of a different medium, being stop motion, and it
Yep.
is very much a Wes Anderson film, whereas
Yeah.
none of these other movies really have a name attached to it. So, I mean, that could help or hurt Isle of Dogs, but I think it just makes it stand apart a little bit, regardless, whether that's
Yeah.
good or bad.
Yeah, I'm definitely rooting for Spider-Verse though, and I do hope it wins. I think there's some pretty good nominees here though. I did enjoy Incredibles 2 quite a bit. I thought Ralph Breaks the Internet was a pretty solid film as well. Never saw Mirai. It'd be nice to see that, but I never saw it. And I did like Isle of Dogs, but I do hope Spider-Verse wins. It'd be great to see a Spider-Man movie winning an Oscar. That'd be a pretty cool thing to say, and I think tonight we could see that.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of the same boat. I've seen all four of these, or four of these, except for Mirai. But yeah, I thought Incredibles 2 is great. I remember going to see the first one when I was, I would have been 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
Loved it. Saw the second one this summer. Loved it again. Isle of Dogs, really enjoyable. Ralph Breaks the Internet. I've never been a huge fan of Wreck-It Ralph, but again, it's just a bunch of Disney kind of throwing in your face. And as
Yeah.
a huge Disney fan, I enjoyed it anyways.
Yeah, I thought the animation was terrific in that film. It looked great.
hmm One
Um,
more to touch on,
yep.
since we touched on Best Actor, I might talk about Best Actress in a Leading Role as well.
Yeah, I was definitely going to point towards that. That's going to be an interesting one tonight.
Yeah, I think this one could be pretty divisive, pretty heated as well.
Yeah, I think this could. I mean, Best Picture is always. I mean, people are going to be mad no matter what. It's just the nature of an award ceremony, and especially one this large. So people will get mad no matter what. But I do think the actress in leading role is probably the second most controversial this year. I think that Best Picture is definitely number one, as it usually always is. But I think Best Actress is one that it could be pretty interesting depending on the result. I mean, the Glenn Close talk. Never won one before. Um, could it be her first? Lady Gaga, uh, Olivia Colman. I thought was great. I mean, I wouldn't be disappointed if she won. Melissa McCarthy getting nominated is pretty big for her, especially since she just won the Razzie 2 nights ago for Worst Actress of the Year.
Yeah.
So, and then actually, Yalitza Aparicio getting nominated even for Roma. That came out. I mean, she definitely gave a great performance, and I think it was her first film, if I'm not mistaken, um, uh, or first with a kind of a professional director like Alfonso Cuarón. But that was a very surprise nomination for me when that happened.
Yeah, certainly a surprise. I mean, I think she's very deserving of it. And I think my personal favorite here is probably Olivia Colman. So she used to be on a British comedy called Peep Show,
Mhm.
so I'd really only ever seen her in this really over the top, ridiculous, very very British comedy, and then going and seeing her in the Orient Express last year. Kind of gave me a different perspective of her range and what she could do. And then in The Favorite, she just blew me away.
Yeah,
She did a terrific job of balancing that really kind of obscure comedic style of the film while also bringing a lot to the dramatic sense of playing Queen Anne. And I think Lady Gaga is also going to be one that's going to get a lot of attention, whether she wins or loses. This is her first leading role. I know there's been a lot of criticism about the fact that she's kind of playing her own life story, which you can take that out of their way. I think she did a really good job with the material, especially not being, a formal actor before.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, so
she definitely surprised me in this film when I saw it. I thought she did a great job. Um, she just seems so comfortable in the role. I think that her and Bradley Cooper, I think that was the biggest part. Great chemistry there. I think that's what really drove her to give such a good performance. I think it's tough to say, but um, I don't know really. This is a tough one, but Glenn Close seems to be the one that everyone's guessing. Um, I don't. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'd be happy to see Olivia Colman win because I thought she did terrific in The Favorite. I mean, The Favorite is really an actor I mean, it's a beautiful film overall, technical aspects as well, and from a screenplay standpoint. But the main actresses in this film, her, Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone, that is their movie. They own that film and they drive that film. And I thought she did a terrific job in the leading role in The Favorite. But you know what? I, I don't know if I want to make a prediction here. I think Glenn Close might be the safe bet, but I could definitely see it going to Lady Gaga. I think Olivia Colman's a little bit of a sleeper. I don't think Melissa McCarthy or Yalitza Aparicio have a chance at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Roma's either going to win a lot or it's pretty much going to be overlooked and just kind of win foreign film. It is an oddity that it's nominated for both Best Picture and for foreign film. So I think it's going to win something or it's going to win nothing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it does have 10 nominations, which is tied with The Favorite for the most this year. I think cinematography and foreign film are the ones you can probably give it a lock for. Um, it seems like the safe bet for Best Picture, but who knows? Things could definitely go any which way. We don't know yet, but I mean, we'll see early on when the first awards start to get unveiled, kind of how it's doing, and maybe we can guess from there. But I think that definitely at the end of the night, Roma, as you said, it could just get the foreign language and then get overlooked, or just win a ton of awards.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah, I think that's mostly it here. I mean, visual effects is always a fun one to talk about, in my personal opinion. I've heard a lot of people saying First Man's one that they would pick just because you don't know what's practical and what's CGI.
mhm.
I think that's a pretty cool way to look at it. I think obviously Infinity War and Solo, Ready Player One, it's all kind of just thrown in your face. Visual effects. For me, this has always been my favorite award every year, just because I love sci-fi films personally, and I think this year, I think Infinity War's got to win this award this year. I mean, just one nomination for it, and that's this one. I think that it does win this award tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say Solo and Ready Player One are probably not going to walk away with it for
Hmm.
sure. Like if I had to bet money on it, I think Ready Player One had a lot of visuals, but it didn't necessarily have the greatest and most refined visuals. Um, there was just so much on screen that not all of it was really up to par with everything else. Solo, kind of the same thing. I mean, whatever your thoughts on the movie are, there's been a lot of flack associated with Solo. I don't
Yeah.
think its visuals were all that impressive, especially compared to like The Last Jedi or Rogue One from the past 2 years before. But on the other hand, I think Christopher Robin surprisingly had really good visuals with all of the Hundred Acre Wood characters.
Yeah, they were good.
Uh, and I mean, Winnie the Pooh looked like an actual stuffed animal. Same thing with Piglet and Tigger. It was there weren't a lot of visuals in the movie, but the visuals that were computer animated were done very, very well. And same thing with First Man. I think, as you said, has the advantage because it's hard to distinguish what's real, what was made on a computer. But I think Infinity War is so big and so recognized
Hmm.
for specifically its detail on Thanos that I feel like the Infinity Gauntlet is going to shift in that direction.
Yeah, 100%.
Uh, it's it's going to be another visual effects is going to be another stone for Thanos to stick on the gauntlet. Is
Yep.
the pun I'm
Yep.
trying to make?
Yep. There you go. Just wanted to touch on lastly here the actress and actor in supporting role. Do you think Mahershala Ali and Regina King have these awards locked, or do you think that there's an opening for someone else to maybe sneak in there and win it? What do you think?
I'd say Regina King probably would. I'd say her biggest competition is going to be Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as actor, I'd honestly say that I don't think Mahershala Ali has it at all.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that plays into kind of the Green Book is a very okay movie. It made a
Hmm.
decent profit, but people like it, but nobody really loves it over the top. I mean, I've heard a lot of praise for the film is, it was an enjoyable 2 hours, but not just a ton towards the actors themselves. Uh, Personally, I think this is really going to be heavily between Sam Elliott, Adam Driver, and Sam Rockwell, which, I don't expect Vice to walk away with a lot. I think Christian Bale has a good shot at Best Actor. I think Sam Rockwell did a terrific job becoming George W. Bush. Specifically, if I had to pick, it'd probably go to Adam Driver or Sam Elliott. I just think Adam Driver did a great job playing Flip and Ron Stallworth in BlacKkKlansman. Sam Elliott did a terrific job playing Jackson's older brother in A Star Is Born. And this is his first nomination, I believe, after a pretty long and illustrious career. Yep. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him take it home, really because of how long he's been in Hollywood, active, and just how much of skill and mastery he brought to the role.
Yeah, you know what? If I had to pick my personal favorite performance out of these five, I like Adam Driver in BlacKkKlansman. I thought he really did a terrific job in a supporting role. But you know what? I think it is pretty much locked for Mahershala Ali. I don't 100% agree, but I can see definitely some other scenarios where maybe Sam Elliott, maybe Adam Driver. I think Richard E. Grant's a sleeper. I think that's someone who he's not the favorite to win this award, but that's someone who I think might be able to snag it. But yeah, I would agree in the actress in a supporting role position. I think Regina King is the favorite, but I think the favorite actresses from The Favorite, Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz, I think they are two that could nab that from Regina King. But I think that these are two awards that are more locked for Ali and King. But you know what? Nothing's certain, and we'll see tonight.
Yeah, touching on Mahershala Ali. So I think the biggest negative or detraction I could see for his role is because he played Don Shirley in Green Book, and Don Shirley's family and estate have really disputed a lot of his character in the movie, and so I think that's kind of working against him a little bit. So I don't necessarily have a problem with his performance in the movie, but I think his performance has been attacked a lot by the family and the estate, and just the film in general for it not being very credible as to what actually happened.
No, yeah, 100%. I definitely agree that that's probably the biggest detraction from his chances of winning. That controversy there. So I definitely can agree with you on that. I definitely can see the scenario where he doesn't win. I'm not going to say just because of that. Everyone else on this list gave great performances, but that's definitely something that does detract from his chances.
So yeah, I think that kind of wraps up the Oscars and pretty much wraps up the podcast for today. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the MovieBabble podcast. Again, you can check us out online at MovieBabbleReviews.com. I've been Colin. My other host was Brennan. And feel free to join us next week as we talk about some Oscar recap, as well as the opening films A Medea Family Funeral and Greta.